Well, I want to say welcome to you, Wendy. We've known each other for a few years now, and it has been a pleasure to work with you. Wendy McMahan, El Presidente of For the Children. And it's good to have you with us. I have to say, before we get into the material at hand today, Starfish would not be where it is today. We would not be serving in the UK were it not For the Children. And I just want to say thank you. So for those that don't know, we're part of the For the Children International Network. There's international expressions of camp and mentoring in various other countries. And For the Children has been so open-handed in helping us get established in the UK. So officially, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Wendy.
Well, Brian, it's such an honor to partner with you and Misty and everyone at Starfish. I get to take no personal credit, as you started long before I arrived at For the Children, but this partnership has just been so beautiful, and the way that you're serving children in a place where, my team never could, but you're serving so well and doing such a good job of bringing the kingdom.
Well, I think I speak for both of us, because now For the Children's been doing this for 40 plus years, and we celebrate 10 years of doing camps this year. But our organizations collectively, and this is, I think, also led by your example, want to do more in addition to just camps. We want to stay in our lane. We want to do well at what we do well. But also we see a need where we can provide resource and help still within our lane, so to speak, but we can provide something to carers and professionals and people that are in the fostering space. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because there is a new initiative from For the Children called Bridge to Belonging. Can you tell us what Bridge to Belonging is? We'll get into how it came about and all that kind of stuff in more detail, but just a general kind of shotgun approach at what Bridge to Belonging is and why. Why did For the Children decide to come forward with Bridge to Belonging?
Bridge to Belonging is a way for your church, for any church, to learn how to welcome children who have experienced trauma in their Sunday morning services, whether that's in big church, what we would call big church, with the grown-ups, or if that's children's ministry or any other representation of the church. So helping those children's ministry volunteers, pastors, anybody in the pews who wants to know how to welcome children who have had difficult experiences into their church community.
Oh, that's great. For those of you who don't know, both of our organizations work through local churches to do our program. So that's important to us as faith-based organizations. Why should it be important to a church?
Right. That's such a great question. Why should this even matter in the life of a church? Well, we know that Jesus says that some of his favorite people are children, right? And we know that he says that anybody who harms a child has to stand before him and be accountable for that. And we know that there's a lot of children who have been harmed. And what they need most of all is the hope of Jesus Christ in their lives. So, the Bridge to Belonging idea came about because we talked to so many of our volunteers and camp directors who would say, whenever we have kids at camp, they want to go to church after that. They want to come and, be part of church on a Sunday morning, because their experience at camp is, that's where people love me. That's where I had that experience. And that's where I even found out who God is. And then when we bring those kids to church, when they go home to their foster carers and then they're invited to come to church, their experience on a Sunday morning might be very different. And that is, I want to just say, that is not the fault of any particular volunteer or any particular pastor. For me, I was a foster mom for a very long time. We became adoptive parents as well. And we had experiences at church where we didn't feel that our children were welcome. Now, of course, if you talk to any church, they're going to say, of course your children are welcome here. However, sometimes our kids' behaviors were much bigger than whatever the children's ministry workers were equipped for. And so there would be times, and we hear from other foster carers as well, that they might bring their children to church, the children who are in their care, and children's ministry simply is not equipped to handle the behaviors that they bring. So that's what we're trying to solve.
That's an important thing to point out. Your programs, Royal Family Kids Camp and our Starfish Kids Camp, are based on the same model. We based ours on your model, so very similar, almost exactly the same, except for cultural things that have been adjusted here in the UK. But what a lot of people don't realize, and foster carers go through a lot of training to become a foster carer, of course. Now, our volunteers don't go through as much training, but our volunteers do go through training specifically how to interact with the campers that come to our programs. And so, of course, they're going to experience love and acceptance and adults that interact with them in different ways, that connect with them on different levels. And they're going to go to a church where they don't train their people in the same way. And that's not a criticism. That's just the way things are.
That's right. Yeah, churches have a lot going on, right? And for me, I know I teach Sunday school at my church. I teach children's church, and I didn't come into it so that I could manage difficult behaviors. I'll just put it that way, right? Nobody goes, I want to teach Sunday school so that I can, pay a lot of attention to this kid who's pushing the other kids around. Nobody says that. And I understand how disruptive it can be when children come in with some of those more difficult behaviors. And so, children's ministry workers, that's not what they signed up for. And yet those disruptions can cause so much difficulty for everybody in the class. It also makes it difficult to retain our volunteers in children's ministry. And so that's what we're really looking to solve, to give our children's ministry workers and anybody who wants to at the church to be able to have more tools so that they can feel confident going into an environment where there's kids who have had traumatic experiences in their past, and they know how not only to manage those behaviors, but to prevent them before they would ever happen.
Yeah, I know as a pastor of a church and as a man, one of our deficiencies as men is that we have the inability to think on different frequencies at the same time.
Okay.
Our bandwidth is very narrow. And so when we're up there preaching on this message that we've spent, we were up all Saturday night preparing for this message on Sunday morning.
Right. Sure, right.
Excuse me. And so you're just preaching this amazing message about the love of Jesus. And this child, I speak from experience. We have a child in our church now, he's a little guy. The way he communicates is by screaming everything. He's not on the spectrum. From what I know, there's not trauma, but he's just at that stage where if he's uncomfortable, he screams. If he wants to go to the toilet, he screams. That's just the way. And a guy like me is up there, and that distraction, it's all of a sudden like all of the wavelengths in my brain just go like this. And our tendency is to respond like, we need to address that. We need to get that quiet. We need to restore peace so that we don't distract anymore and we can focus on what's important, what I'm saying. So we think. But how that is so important, as you say, because how we respond and how everything from just the turning heads and the glowering looks to maybe someone saying a harsh word to that child will speak things that will stick with them for a very long time about what church is about.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, one of the comments in these videos from one of our trainers is that when a child goes to the doctor and has a bad experience at the doctor, they think, I hate doctors. If they have a bad experience with their teacher at school, they go, I don't like my teacher, or I don't like school. But if they have an experience at church where they feel rejected, it's not just church, it's God, where they go, I knew that God didn't love me. I knew that God didn't want me. So it's so important. And, if we can just use that example of the loud child for a moment, it's such a good example, Brian, because it's true. The pastor is in his mindset of communicating this beautiful message, and in his mind, and probably everybody's mind, this child is getting in the way of everybody else having that experience. And so what Bridge to Belonging will do for the church is, first of all, adjust some mindsets so that everybody understands that's okay. That's okay that we have, somebody who has an outburst in our congregation, and recognizing that as a special need that someone would have, in the same way that someone might have a developmental need that might cause some of those things. So that's the first part. But then also it's not appropriate for that to continue to happen in church. And so Bridge to Belonging will give some tools. So one of the tools we suggest is a buddy program. And that would be somebody who can come and sit with that family through church, so that it's not always the foster carer who is, the one being targeted as, why can't you control this child? And then somebody to come alongside that parent as well. And then some tips and tricks for how to handle some of those behaviors. And so really it's everybody meeting in the middle. We're going to have to get a little more comfortable with some of the unique characteristics that our kids bring. But at the same time, there's ways that we can intervene to truly help that child to be more accommodated and to be able to be behaving in a way that the church would be able to manage.
Well, so Bridge to Belonging is for churches.
That's right.
Let's walk through what Bridge to Belonging is.
Great.
We've been talking about it for a few minutes, but what exactly is it? If I click on a link, which, by the way, there will be a link to our website, which will take you to the For the Children training site, where you can sign up to go through Bridge to Belonging. But what will they find?
Great. The first thing they will find is that it is completely free. So there is no cost for any of the resources in Bridge to Belonging. We were able to do that because of a generous grant from a funder who recognizes the importance of children being able to worship and pray. So because of that, when you click on Bridge to Belonging, you'll be invited to create an account, and that will give you access to all of the workbooks and videos. The primary thing that we offer is training videos for the church. There are 7 videos, and they're about a half hour each, and they're designed so that a small group or a large group would go through them together and discuss questions between each video. So that means, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have the privilege today of talking to one of the stars of the video series. You are featured along with Cupcake, and we won't say what Cupcake is, but you'll find out when you see the videos.
That's right.
You did a fabulous job, by the way. But it's not you. It's you and some other people who are trained in what's called TBRI. We did a video on that here a few weeks ago, trust-based relational intervention, and then some people with some practical experience, pastor and a congregant, etc. So anyway, I interrupted you. You may have some things to say on the tail of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good further explanation of what it is. And we did partner with the Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development, which holds the intellectual property of TBRI. So they are responsible for all of the research and development. And really, they trained any of us who are TBRI practitioners in the model. So we had wonderful trainers from the Karen Purvis Institute who joined us. And then between each of those videos, there's that opportunity for the group to talk about it. And we feel that's really important for the church to work together. We see that being used in small groups. So if someone in the church has a Bible study group, or what my church would call a life group, they could take this and do up to a 7-week study on Bridge to Belonging specifically. I especially recommend that for those groups who have foster carers in them, because it's going to provide some real good tools for those people who are very close to that family. And then if you want to do it as a large group or as a special, children's ministry training or something of that sort, we suggest perhaps doing that on a Saturday, and that could be an almost full day training. If you start in the morning, include lunch in there, include some discussion time, you'd probably wrap up at 2 or 3 o'clock. So there's a couple of ways to do that.
Well, let me ask you this then, because let's say I'm not a foster carer. I don't do anything with children's ministry. I am a janitor, or I am on the worship team, or I'm an usher, or I just attend because my wife pulls me along every Sunday or whatever. Is this still something that would benefit me in the church?
Yeah, it's going to benefit everybody in the church. It changes the whole fabric of your church when people understand the special needs of kids. And whether or not that person is interacting directly with the child, it changes everything. Another resource that we have as part of Bridge to Belonging is an entire ministry toolkit. And that toolkit is, it's print-based, so it's a digital toolkit that you would be able to download, and it gives ideas for how to actually bring these ideas to bear in your church environment. And probably the most useful part of that for, like you said, the worship leader or the janitor or the usher greeter or a number of other roles at the church is that at the end of that toolkit, there are printable pages for each of those roles. Not for the janitor, to be honest, but for your usher greeter, worship leader, teaching pastor, children's ministry worker, and several other roles at the church. So that, for example, if I'm a greeter at the church and I see a family coming in and I know about some of the special needs of that child, what are the ways that I can immediately put that family at ease? So it's just a printable, you hand it to the usher greeter team, and then they have their marching orders. They know what to do.
Well, and I think it's important from my personal experience in different churches, some of the special needs that these kids bring aren't visible. And so they're going to manifest in ways that, as we talked about a few minutes ago, might evoke a response from us that would not be helpful. The thing I like about this, and I've been watching these videos and going through the program myself, number one is the brain science that's involved in it. I mean, there's a lot of research that goes into this about how brains work. Our brains, baby brains, everything. And the research and the brain science that's involved, but also this is what is, I tell you, just to be honest, this is what I still struggle with, is always being self-aware. I'm learning this when I'm going through this, is becoming a better caregiver means always being self-aware. Because Darren talked about this in session 4, I believe. He talks about the things we bring. Amanda Purvis talks about this a little bit too. I think you might mention it. But the things we bring to the table when it comes to how we interact with children. The first thing is how we were interacted with when we were children. So our background comes into that, how we were parented or how we interacted with adults when we were children affects how we interact with children as we are now adults. Also, the stress and things that's happening currently in our lives, we bring that. So not being self-aware. I think what I'm getting at is if a church, number one, wants to be an advocate or even just a warm place for families who are in foster care or adoptive care, who wouldn't want to be that? You ask a church, hey, church, do you want to be a warm place where foster families and families that are undergoing some difficult times, just, and children that are, of course, yay. But what that really means is they may not be ready for what it really means. And this, in my estimation anyway, this helps a church prepare for what it means to be a warm church. In other words, if you're just on the worship team, and you have some children in big church, some churches still, and I think this is a great thing, will have the children in during the worship time. And I think it's amazing. But some kids don't always interact in a way that's copacetic with our liturgy, to use a strange phrase. But if I'm the worship leader and I understand the children, not just the children who have dealt with trauma, but any child, the brain science that's there, even though I'm not involved with children's ministry, it helps me understand what it means as a church to be a welcoming place for these children.
That's exactly right. And, for you as a pastor to be able to say that is very powerful, because I often say most lead pastors, they don't come into ministry because they want to help, this population specifically, right? They want to grow and disciple a congregation, which is a high calling. And when they realize that these children can be part of that movement of God, they start asking, what more do I need? And when you talk about being aware and mindful of our own biases, the way we were raised, I think that's really true. It's something that for me, I'm constantly looking at and wondering about, because as I was growing up, nobody ever asked me, what's the need behind your behavior? It was more like, that behavior is unacceptable and we're going to stop that right now. And for me,
That's a lot kinder than the way it was put to me.
Just in case my parents watch this, they did a great job. And for me, growing up as a typical child without that trauma history, it worked fine for me. But for our kids, for the children who have gone through difficult experiences that impacted their brain development, we have to stop and say, okay, not just how do I stop this behavior, and not just what's the matter with this kid, but what's the need that this little one has that's behind the behavior. And once we meet that need, that's going to tell us how we can eradicate that difficult behavior.
Yeah, I think it's so important for churches. You mentioned about pastors not having at the front of their minds this category of person in their community that they're reaching out to. Everyone wants to reach everyone. There's this picture. You said, describe the person that you want to reach in your community. Well, they'd have a breath and a pulse, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's true.
But of course, as you understand your community more and you understand the demographics, etc., foster children are in every community. And fostering is such an amazing analogy of the gospel. And we want to I think every church should be aware of that and should encourage that. But I want to turn the table just a little bit, because I want to talk about the impact that helping a church become a warm place for foster families is not only important for the child's understanding of who God is, but for the parents. What's the number one, a little quiz here, what's the number one, not problem is not the right, what's the number one issue to overcome with foster carers? I'll answer it, so I don't want to put you on the, I would say it's bowing out. It's foster carers that start and then they back out and can't keep up.
That's
right. It's a huge thing. You have a lot of experience in foster care, so let me just ask you, what are some things that help cause that problem? Why do foster carers back out?
Yeah, and statistically, that's very true. It's very uncommon for a foster family to last more than 1 year or one placement. So after that first placement, they go, well, this can't be a lifestyle for us. We can't continue to do this. And those who do find some kind of a rhythm and some kind of a support network that makes it happen. It happens because, when I was a foster parent, the typical thing that anybody would say when they would find out was, wow, you're amazing. That's so wonderful that you do that. I could never do that. I would get too attached to the child. And they really put you on a pedestal. And, I'll be honest, that feels nice for a little while, but it is also very othering. It made me feel like I was doing something that was very different. And then when we actually needed support, it wasn't always there. And the number of times that somebody said, wow, that must be really difficult. Could I bring you a meal? Or could I sit and pray with you? Or what do you guys need right now? How could I help you? I could probably count those on one hand, maybe two in the 9 years that we fostered. And so the loneliness that there can be, and then that's exacerbated when the children in our home have some of those more difficult behaviors that then ostracize us from their peers and the families of their peers. So whereas, in a typical family, my kids might play with other kids and I would get to know the parents of those kids, foster children often cycle through friends. They often make a lot of enemies because of the behaviors that come from the fear that's been built in their brains. So I do believe that Bridge to Belonging and any kind of understanding that we can provide that lends to actual help and support for families is going to help them to last longer and to actually be able to attend church on a weekend.
Yeah, can you imagine being a foster carer and going to a church, and let's say maybe you have a child that has an episode, whatever that episode might be, fill in the blank, and instead of people turning around in their pew and giving them the eye, what if they had people after church come up to them and say, hey, that's okay, I get it.
Oh, yes.
Those three words, I get it. Now, that may not, going through Bridge to Belonging is not going to, put us through everything that a foster care, understands. We're not going to understand foster care 100% just by going through Bridge to Belonging. But what it does, it helps us see from the perspective of people who are doing the care and the children that are in care and the experiences that they have, helps us, it opens our eyes to say, oh, I get it. And so when you as a foster care, have an episode, or maybe you're at the altar and you're just like, oh, I'm just at my wit's end, that foster care, that altar worker, man, what if they've gone through Bridge to Belonging? And then they can say, hey, you don't have to say another word. I kind of understand. I'm not a foster care. I'm not there 100%, but I kind of understand. Let me pray for you. And then, like you said, meals and in ways that are appropriate, maybe some help with care.
To be approached in that way, rather than somebody giving me parenting advice based on their parenting of typical children. Their kids turned out great, and so they think they can just tell me what to do. Like foster carers do a lot of nodding and just patient listening when we know that's not going to work. But for that altar worker to say, I know a little bit about what you're going through, and I just want to pray for you, or I'm just so glad that you're here. How can we support you? That changes everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wendy, Bridge to Belonging is an amazing program, and when we first started getting news of it and seeing the preview trailer, I thought this is something that we want to provide over here, and like I said, we've got a TBRI training coming up on February 28th, and the response to that has been overwhelming. There's a huge demand for carers that want this type of training. But we're gonna talk about this a little bit. We're gonna have a window where we're gonna talk about Bridge to Belonging, and we're gonna hopefully we'll funnel some clicks from the UK. When you look on your website stats and all that kind of stuff, I'm hoping that we'll have some UK clicks on there, because I really think this is a tool. Yes, we're helping churches, but we're helping churches help those who are caring for the least of these, as Jesus said. And that's my heart as a pastor. That's my heart with Starfish. Excuse me. It's not only to help kids, it's always been to equip the church and to see the church transformed into the caring machine that God wants it to be. So, anything else you want to share about Bridge to Belonging? I've taken up 30 plus minutes of your day anyway. But anything else you'd like to share? Maybe anything we missed?
Well, I'm just so grateful for you introducing it to the UK, and I want to apologize in advance to any viewers for the American accents. We know it's the wrong one. It's the only one I've got. So we appreciate your patience and your long suffering through that in order for us to share this content with you. I really do believe that God has a special place in his heart for these children. And as much as we as the church can come alongside and support the families who are caring for them and the children themselves, I think God is going to smile on that. So thank you so much, Brian, and thanks to your audience for the time.
Well, it's been amazing. The material is very well done. I do want to say that. Whoever was in charge of production, they did a great job. The people participating did an amazing job. It's just a very well done resource. And for those who are listening or watching on YouTube or whatnot, we will make this available. Like I said, if you go to the comments, or not the comments, but the description of the video, we'll have a link down there that will take you to our website, and it'll take you to the link for the children. And you do have to sign up for it, but it's free. And if you do the currency conversion, free in US dollars is free in GBP, Great British Pound.
Amazing how that works. Yes.
I know, it's amazing. So, if you want to maybe see if your church wants to go through this, either corporately or as a small group offering, get in touch with us and we can help you with that, because the material is there, but we can also at Starfish, we can help you in your church with some ideas, putting this together as a program of your church and making it happen. So Wendy, Bridge to Belonging for the children, it's a great product. It's a great service. It's a great resource. You guys are amazing at what you do. Keep up the good work. Your little brother over here in the UK I'm talking about Starfish. Sometimes people talk about the relationship between the UK and the US as a sibling to a sibling. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
Starfish. Yep.
Is the little brother for the children. We have so much to owe to you, but thank you for yet again having an open hand with the resources for making life better for children who've experienced trauma and have experienced care.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brian.
All right. God bless you.
God bless you.